Welcome to the Dingus Den, where we're here for a brand new review over Batman White Knight by Sean Murphy. This is going to be an exciting one to get into, and so let's do it.
Welcome to the Dingus Den.
All right, well, we are back. Welcome back, Warren, aka Lunchbox Comics. Great having you back for another review. Um, I remember after we did our first sort of topic, I sent you a list of comics to read, and there's two that stood out to you on that list. The first one was the one that we reviewed in the last video,
Yes.
Wonder Woman, Dead Earth, and then the other one was this one, Batman, White Knight. Where this comic, I didn't realize it. Said it on the back here that it was the first is the debut of the DC Black Label imprint.
Okay.
Which I didn't realize that, which is, but anyway, pretty cool. This is one of those books that, I remember I read this one years ago. I think this one came out shortly after I was first started getting into comics. And everyone was talking about how great this book is.
Yeah.
And at the time I read it, I remember specifically it was like a copy from the library I got. And I read it and I remembered my first thoughts of this was Batman's an asshole. And I didn't like it because of that. But obviously, as the years gone by, I've been curious about revisiting it. So I picked up a copy at a con, this copy right here, because there's a good deal on it that I was like, I couldn't pass it up. And so here we are to talk about Batman being an asshole, which, I mean, the parts of him being an asshole I clearly remembered, but I didn't remember anything else about this book, other than obviously the whole premise of, as we get into it, of Joker going sane and,
Yeah.
learning Jack Napier. And so, but anyway, with that little past history aside, this book, it's a really good read. There's something that I will get into in a moment here about something that I really appreciate that it does. Um, it's written really well, so credit to Sean Murphy for doing something unique about both the last review that we did and this one is that the writer and main artist is the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not like obviously that's a thing that'll happen in the world of comics, but it's not something that happens very often. And so, interesting little bit of coincidence there. Obviously, want to give credit to where where credit's due. So amazing job there, as well as Matt Hollingsworth for doing the coloring in this. He did really good colors in this too. That helped bring this artwork out in a wonderful job. So, but before we get into sort of specifics and stuff about this, what are your overall thoughts on this one?
I love these Elseworld kind of what if kind of stories. And I mean, artwork aside, it's such a great Batman story. Like he takes your normal Batman world and just sort of knocks things left to right just a little bit here and there, and adjusts it. Batman's a little bit more of a dick than he usually is, and Joker is he's not as necessarily menacing in this one. It was more of the Joker type, jokey type Joker, and then
Sure.
Yeah, it was just all around a good story. I really liked how he handled the side cast: Nightwing, Barbara, Gordon, Bullock. There was just the deep cuts and just beautifully styled. The Batmobile, Batman's costume with the collar
Oh
looks
yeah.
great. Just the everything about it is just top notch. And I love it when that happens, when a writer artist is just allowed to go nuts and have fun. And that's really what this feels like. It's just a really good beginning, middle, and end story, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you mentioned artists being able to have fun. He had so much fun putting in so many Easter eggs throughout this story.
Oh, yeah.
Such as one of the things I just noticed while just looking at the covers right here. There's a little Batmobile right there. The camera doesn't show it too well, but that's styled after like the animated series Batmobile. We get different Batmobiles throughout the story as well, which we'll get into why exactly that is. But you know, one of them's literally the '89 Batmobile that shows up, or they literally call another one of the Batmobiles the Tumbler at one moment. You
Yeah,
know,
the Tumblr
and
makes a preview in it, and
yeah,
it's just all over the place. It's a lot of fun.
yeah,
Um,
it definitely is, and not much just being, you know, beyond it just being fun as well. It tells a really deep story too. Um, Not to get into the story, you know, just to give a general summary of what the story is. It's about we see this idea where Joker turns into he finds this medication essentially that makes him turn sane. And we turns out that through this medication he turns into this really smart guy, and with that he's able to essentially turn the public against Batman. But also, like, you know, it brings up an interesting what if scenario of like, well, what if like Batman isn't the way of doing things,
yeah,
you know? And so it's a really interesting way to bring that about. But then obviously, as things go on, things kind of like blow up. The good side of Joker is always referred to the name that was given to him in Batman '89, Jack Napier, where he sides with uh, Jim Gordon, and then later Batgirl and Nightwing end up like all teaming up. They make this Gotham Task Operation GTO. It's called. And then, but then meanwhile, there's this other set of villains that come up, and essentially Jack Napier has to then uh, it blows up to him having to help Batman after he gets locked away, and then they go defeat the bad guys. And so
yeah,
that's just kind of like the story in a nutshell. Like it is a nice, you know, we'll get into a bit of the details as we, you know, as we talk about this a bit more, but that's kind of like the easiest summary I can give with it. Um, but yeah. So anyway, this story, uh, I really appreciate how it's written. One of the things I really appreciate about it, and that not a lot of comics, you know, a lot of them try to do this, but they don't, especially in this time of day and age, is it's able to get into the sort of political nature in Gotham without it feeling like a forced story.
yeah. It wasn't preachy or ham-fisted. It
No,
was very nuanced.
yeah,
You know, yeah,
yeah. I'm one of those people that I don't I hate political talk in general, um, but I do love if you can tell a good story with it, you know? There's a
yeah,
bunch of great stories that can make great use of telling a political story that's not foremost, you know? Um, I you know, I don't like to knock stories, but one that's a great example of it tried to do a similar story to this in some ways, but didn't do it nearly as well, and is honestly probably one of my least favorite books on my shelves that I own, is another Batman story, and one that's a bestseller, sadly. Uh, the Batman '89 comics tried to do something like this, and that one was very,
oh,
you know, you know,
yeah,
preachy in some regards, trying to do something similar like this. But this one does it in a much better way, in my opinion. And that's one of the things I really appreciated about this one, was you were able to sort of get these sort of political underlines while also telling a great character motivated story
yeah.
throughout this whole thing. We got an interesting side of, you know, it does a great job, at least for me when I was reading it. You're reading like the first 3 quarters of it, and you're like, Batman is such a freaking asshole.
Yeah, he's very Dark Knight Returns Frank Miller Batman, where he's just
Kinda,
gruff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but then in like the last quarter, they like make up for it a little bit, you know? And they do it in a way too, and this is one of the things why I guess I just didn't pick up on is when I first read it is that they set up reasons for why he's the way he is, and then it does come full circle at the end. As you were saying, like this is just a nice one and done story. It's 8 issues.
Yeah.
It's a very nice story that the writer didn't know if he'd be able to continue this universe. Now they did. There's a sequel and like a spin-off with Joker and Harley, a one shot, and then there's something that I think is in this universe that's with Batman Beyond as well. So point aside, it has gotten expanded a bit. But at the time, this was just a nice, hey, this is what they were able to put out, showing what the DC Black Label is capable of, because it is a very I mean, DC can get dark without
Yeah.
this dark label, Black Label imprint, but here, as we talk about a bunch of these political themes and stuff that happens with it, it's just a bit more so than what DC normally does.
Yeah, they
Um,
didn't go full like rated R, but they definitely went like night television, like Sons of
good.
Anarchy kind of level of this was more of an adult story with adult tones. It was
Yeah.
a very interesting dynamic. I really like what he did with Harley. He toned down all of like the Mr. J type stuff. And
Yeah.
then she was more of the psychologist Harley, as well as being kind of a badass
Mhm.
herself. And the dynamic between the three of them, where it's
Mhm.
like Batman's almost like a big brother, and then Joker is her love, and she's seeing this, because Joker has like this split personality, and she's like, she
Yeah.
loves him, but at the same time, she realizes that he also, the man that she loves, goes away. And
Mhm.
it was a nice dynamic to see between the three of them, because those three really are the main characters of the story. Essentially, it's
Yeah.
Batman's and Joker, with Harley kind of acting as an intermediary between
Yeah.
the two.
Yeah, absolutely. You bring up some great points there. We see one thing I particularly like, and we don't really see about it too much in modern comics as well, of that modern narrative of Joker and Harley broken up. Here we get to see a great love dynamic between them.
Hmm.
And they do a great job at it, I think. I really enjoyed reading their love dynamic in this one. And then we get the whole Harley twist of when that first happened, I was confused. I was like, wait, what? There's two Harleys? And it is kind of showing how crazy Joker slash Jack didn't really realize what was going on
Yeah,
in that situation. And so I am glad on that part that it did later get fully explained a few issues later of oh, this is what happened.
yeah.
Um, and it's like, oh, okay, he's really just that crazy where he doesn't recognize that somebody that looks similar is really a different person or not. And so, but yeah, no, I love that the seeing their relationship together. Because they were always one of those comic book couples I feel like works. I mean, I do like the Martin and Harley and Poison Ivy as well, but for the purposes of the story, it did it,
Yeah,
great job with it.
Joker, in most iterations, Joker, Harley's just around, because Joker's main love is Batman.
Yeah.
His a fixation is Batman. So adding in a Jack Napier side where this medication that
Hmm.
he gets force fed by Batman, in a very, like the beginning parts of it,
Yeah.
um, then you can see the Jack Napier side. Jack Napier is completely in love with Harley.
Yeah.
And then, so then it's the back and forth, the abusive monster that's inside him, and then also, then it's him and the dynamic in there. It also kind of mirrors what loved ones go through with family members who are facing either mental health issues or addiction problems. It's like there's a monster side of them, but they love. There is a side they fell in love with. So there was that kind of torn dynamic that they played with Harley on that. They did a really good job with too, even into the sequel also.
Yeah, I haven't read the sequel, but that's you bring up some great points there, absolutely. I do really enjoy seeing as well. you were mentioned. Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought of what the hell I was bringing up.
Oh, no
Um,
worries.
you said
Happens to me
something.
all the
I
time.
know, right? Anyway, other things with the story though. We do get other than the relationship, let's talk about some of the other side characters that's with this. Oh no, I remember what I was gonna say. You mentioned about how seeing Joker being obsessed with Batman. You know, it's a great they make a great distinction between Joker and Jack Napier in this story.
Yeah.
And I did really like, you know, it shows how Joker is completely obsessed with Batman through all these different means, you know. Literally the cover shows him, you know, the cover right here shows him that it's literally a you literally see him holding his head and all the stuff around him. Uh,
Almost like he's worshiping at the altar
yeah,
that
it
is
was probably
Batman, you
yeah.
know? Yeah.
And so and having all these cool Batman references and whatnot, and yeah, it's a great cover. And so, but we also do get into, you know, I liked how it delved into like, well, when Harleen Quinzel first treating him, she was able to see the Jack Napier side of him. And that's why she fell in love with him, not the crazy Joker side that made her turn crazy or blah, blah,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Like it was because of that, of her trying to actually help him. And then there's a moment too far where then she left him. And
Which was the Jason Todd event, I believe.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And
They maybe tie that one in there too. Yeah.
that was a neat tie-in as well, seeing making, you know, having it was one of those stories that the universe is familiar enough, but there is little changes that when you kind of like read between the lines of certain things, like it is different, you know.
Yeah.
That being one of them. One of the things that threw me off was when Nightwing mentioned that he was Jason Todd came before him in the graveyard scene. Like that threw me off. But that and a big difference with that scene, as we find out later on, is that and part of the whole painting Batman a bad guy, although this is one of the like, final reveals with it when he's coming to terms of all the bad stuff that he did in those last couple issues, is finding out that, well, actually Jason Todd survived, but he just chose to run away because of Batman being the bad guy of, you know, the abusive side, you could say.
Yeah.
You know, you know, there's this great way of showing how Joker slash Jack is very much the same in many ways of how Batman slash Bruce is, respectively.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really cool to see a mirror in their relationship in that way throughout the story. I always appreciate when you can get different takes on characters that are well done, but then also you know, different enough with these sort of Elseworld stories. And I
Yeah.
think that's just something DC does great in general with. And so it's cool to see them keep up with doing it throughout the years. You know, like for example, one of my absolute favorite comics of all time is Kingdom Come, you know, does the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
All-Star
Kingdom Come's
Superman.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's one of the, you know, when you really dissect down a character, like you have the DC Batman, the mainstream, and he's going to be limited because he is a character that is essentially for kids. So, but when you're exploring into this level, when you look at his mission, there's
sure.
a fine line between a passion and an obsession, and really, if you tune up that obsessive part, well, then Batman becomes almost like a militant drill sergeant, obsessive compulsive, where he would be mentally abusive
Yeah.
to a Robin, where he would take the mission above everything else and close himself off. And I always thought it'd be looking at Batman as almost like an alcoholic, except his alcohol is justice and vengeance, being Batman,
Sure.
where no matter what happens, he's always going to be Batman, and you really can't take him away from that. You can't take him away. You know, he'd have to go off at cold turkey just to stop doing it.
Yeah.
Treating it as if it was some kind of like obsession, like an addiction to him.
Yeah.
was doing this. So it is interesting when you start playing those up, and then also questioning the overall purpose of his mission. Like there is something to be said where it's like, okay, you could spend billions of dollars making tanks for yourself that are bat themed, but what would happen if you revolutionize the police department's vehicles and
Mhm.
equipment and training and funding, and put that same money you pour into your obsessive battle fighting mental health
Mhm.
patients, from Arkham, you instead put that money into that. So there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff that when you start breaking down Batman, you can start playing with and start
Yeah.
asking those questions and putting them in those scenarios where it's like, Batman has to say, well, why? What is your purpose, and what aside from personal vengeance, your mission is could be causing more damage than good. And those are all kind of cool questions you can answer or ask in these Elseworlds. You
Yeah.
can do stuff like, let's kill Lois and see what happens to Superman. And
Right.
you know what? Then you get Injustice.
Right.
You play around with like this kind of cool stuff. And that's one thing that's done about it. And this one does it perfectly. Like it does just plays with the dials enough that creates a different story, but at the same time, it's a Batman story.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely well said there. It's we get so many cool different sort of variations and stuff with when we get into it. Um, and yeah, no, it is a great character exploration at the end of the day. It's one of those things like, it is a very adult Batman story. And so when you're
Yeah.
able to get into it, there's definitely a bunch of layers to it. And it's one of those things that, it definitely stands up in many ways. And so that's great. Um, I'm trying to think of there's some parts here and there I was wanting to get into specifically. First, um, I wanted to delve into a little bit of Batman, while he's feeling that way, leading to everything that you were just talking about is
Yeah.
we get into the whole plot line of, well, Alfred's dying, which then, that's kind of like the leading or is the leading cause of what drives him over the edge throughout all this. But obviously not the main factor to everything because, there's a whole Jason Todd event. So he still had these elements, but that's what made it dial it up to the degree why everyone started turning to him was this whole thing with Alfred really put him over the edge because he does, um, bite it part of the way through it. Um,
Yeah, he's losing another father and he can't stop it.
yeah,
He turns him into a kid all over again, watching his parents die right in front of him, and he's slowly watching Alfred go. I mean, he's trying to go to freeze. He's trying to do whatever he can to
yeah,
save Alfred, and then he has to kind of let that go. And because it's great too because it's like, okay, let's take the Jason Todd event and make it such a traumatic event that it changes the dynamic of all of the characters' relationships. Like
yeah,
Harley can't look at Joker the same. Batman is now keeps everyone at a distance, and it's changed his entire like persona and aura on how he does his stuff. It reverberates, and in that one act, it's so like in the original comics, it was a big act, but at the same time, Batman moved on. This one, it turns into like this is the point that changed everything in Gotham.
sure.
That led up to where we're at now with the White Knight and all the stuff along those lines. So then
Yeah,
with the death of Alfred, that just pushes him even farther.
yeah, and I do love that note at the end too.
Yeah,
Like showing how Alfred knew him so well, and it was a nice full circle. One of the nice couple ending bits to make the story come full circle. Um, but yeah, I did want to talk about some of the other characters and their involvements and stuff. And you brought up how Mr. Freeze is definitely very important with Batman here. Interesting thing of I don't know too much of in the main line how much they would have touched with Mr. Freeze with if there's any similarities what Mr. Freeze did in this and mainline at all with his history and stuff. But how they did Mr. Freeze in this, I thought was cool though.
Yeah.
We had this cool background with Mr. Freeze and how things happened with him, turning out where like he knew Batman's parents, and because of his technology, he was actually a bit older than he appeared to be. So in a way, it was like an actual older Mr. Freeze that
Yeah.
we got. Learning that the Waynes had a deep affiliation with um, the Nazis in some ways, and so that was a quite an interesting turn. A secret even kept from Batman, and so it was like one of those big things that felt very much like like in the Batman when they find out about the Carmine Falcone business, and
Yeah.
that felt very much like that to me. And so, but no, Mr. Freeze I thought was a cool supporting character. He played a huge, important part in it, which makes me even more curious to go read that Mr. Freeze one shot that they did put in this, that they did that's set in this universe. Having his whole family history, setting up his parents were actually really like bad guys. By the end of it, when there's that giant ice cannon, essentially, he's like, I don't know how to shut that thing off. That's my parents' inventions. And so,
It-
he's
uh, it's great too because Sean really, or Mr. Murphy really, or Mr. Sean Gordon Murphy, yeah, Mr. Murphy really, he doesn't, he didn't have to do that with Freeze, give him that much of a backstory, but
yeah,
yet he does, and it helps enrich the story and the characters and intertwine so much more. It's really cool. Like he really took some time and really fleshed out this world with these characters, and
yeah.
it was cool.
Yeah, I definitely really enjoyed that part. Like anytime you kind of get into like this deep sort of history with, Gotham or whatever, and being able to explore something how it's different in this case, if in this case with the freezes, like Mr. Freeze is always just, I think, such a great villain, right? Like he's always such a tragic villain, and you still have that whole, you still have the DNA of what makes Mr. Freeze in the story with, him wanting to care for Nora. And because of that, and him having a certain technology, that's why Bruce helps, or they're together and all that stuff. So like, you still have Mr. Freeze, what makes Mr. Freeze, uh,
Yeah.
and so that part's still great about it. Um,
Well, a good, villains, especially good villains, are you have to, like Joker is like the perfect archetype for Batman because Batman is like control and everything, and
mhm,
Joker's chaos.
right.
But with like Mister Freeze or Two Face along those guys, they're that tragic villain where they wouldn't be a villain unless whatever happened to them to set this on this path happened to them. If
Right.
Harvey didn't get splashed, it wouldn't have pushed him over the head edge to a breakdown, and he would have
Yeah.
still be being a prosecutor. Mr. Freeze would be working in some
Mhm.
lab somewhere and going home to his wife Nora and his kids. So there
Yeah.
there is that tragicness about it. And Mr. Freeze has always been kind of like, you cure Nora, he stops being a bad guy. Like, yeah, he's angry and he wants to kind of freeze the world. He's kind of punny at times, but most of the time though, he's all about getting his Nora
Yeah.
back, and you almost don't blame him. It's like he's just trying to get his love back.
Right. And we do see like pretty early on, like issue 2 or 3, like when they are working together, you see how the two of them operate differently. Like you see Mr. Freeze's flaws of trying to rush the process because he's been it for so long and getting frustrated with it, versus when Batman, or Bruce Wayne in this case, is newer to it, him wanting to take the time and being like, "Whoa, hold on, we got to make sure this all works." He's like, "No," and goes ahead and does the test, and then it fails, and getting that whole thing about the cool, that's when the aging part happens with Mr.
Yeah.
Freeze. And so anyway, I thought that was like a great little like character moment there. And we do get a lot of those as far as like, throughout the story goes, of like, Mr. Freeze is just one of many side characters in this story. This story has a really rich cast of characters.
Mhm.
We mentioned Batgirl and Nightwing, of how, you know, both of them play their own role of, while they're both a student of Batman, if you will, they each kind of take like a different side of the situation, you know, of sort of Batman's downfall, where Nightwing's very much kind of in the idea of, I just can't handle him anymore. I want to, you know, go off and, you know, try to do what's better. Versus Batgirl still trying to like hold out a little bit for him, be like, well, hold on, I can kind of see where both of you are like coming from. You know, playing like the nice middle man or middle girl, I
Yeah.
guess in this case, between the two. And so, um, you know, they is a really good like all the characters were just written really well, and when he like, you know, like, break down how they're all in the story, like it is a really well crafted story between all the characters, even with those side character involvements. You know, to the same degree we see that with Jim Gordon and Bullock. You know, Bullock's very much kind of like how Nightwing is, and then uh Gordon being like Batgirl trying to hold out on Batman, and then, you know, one step too far, and then Gordon goes to the other side, and we see them all go after Batman. And so, and you know, because of, and that partially just shows too, I think, where Jack Napier is a great character in this as well, where he's able to make all these convincing arguments. You know, he does such a great job of it. I remember, such as why I didn't like the story the first time I read it. But also does a great job in this of just making Batman being such an asshole. You know, the moment that has stood out the most to me, like the one part that I clearly like remembered from the story, even after having read it all these years ago, uh, was the what's it, how to call it, the parade, the part, the riot that's starting to happen, or all that,
Yeah.
or, protest. That's the word I was looking for. And you know, they're police are like wanting to like keep them contained. They're not wanting them to go across everywhere. And you know, the leads of both are there, and Jack Napier's up there, and then all of a sudden Batman comes in, and it's like the perfect like look of, you know, public humiliation in that case. That, you know, as we learn, you know, obviously there's a bunch of things that Jack Napier does that's shady, right? Like he did set up that whole plot for him to get information to, you know, setting across loose different villains. And that's another interesting point too of, um if Jack Napier went about things and didn't get his hand dirty in that one case, the bad guys wouldn't have necessarily had their way either.
Yeah.
Because we haven't really talked too much, but we get this other um Harley Quinn person. What was her name given in this? You remember?
Oh, no, I don't.
Um, she was very much, she reminded me of like Punchline, and obviously Punchline came later on in
Yeah.
continuity, but she was kind of like a Punchline before Punchline in some way, in several ways. I felt like, heck, could have even been a little bit of a, um what do you want to say, inspiration for Tinian's Batman with introducing Punchline there. But this Punchline-esque character, I wish I could remember her name. Um, we have this whole plot with her mind controlling all these villains. Um, but first, the mind control even happened because of Jack Napier doing it first to stage that whole initial attack.
Yeah.
And so, and that's another interesting thing. We got to see a bunch of familiar villains, but not them being themselves, but them just being merely mere pawns in this case. Um, and it was interesting because Clayface was used in a very interesting way to like control them all, and it, like it was like essentially being used with like Mad Hatter's device, and Clayface together was able to do this, and like
Yeah.
it was crazy. And I like how Clayface by the end he had his moment of being like, "I hate you made me do this," or how I was used in this. and he had his moment of rampage in it all. And so, but yeah, like it just goes into, like I said, this story has a huge cast of characters. You literally have the main, like pretty much every main Batman villain in this. It's like it's when you get into the finale, it really is like a huge crazy like, oh, firing off all canisters, a bunch of Batmobiles. Now that you have all the Batmobiles as part of the GTO, and very very action packed, which is cool, but also like meaty too. I think the story did a really good job of, some issues were pretty meaty, but even the more action packed issues, you still had great character moments and not just being a whole, hey, this is the finale. Like this is one of those great things where the finale, like it had great twists by the end of it.
Yeah,
uh,
it was a character interaction driven story that had great action. So you get to see this great action, but then we go back
yeah,
to the more character driven arcs, and
yeah,
that's really what's nice about it.
yeah, 100%, definitely agree. And so when we get to it, by the end, we really learn who's behind this whole ordeal, and that being, and this is like a great reveal. Like I didn't even remember this, was Harley Quinn being behind everything.
Yeah,
Helping staging this whole thing, and it's like, oh shit, okay. And it's one of those things that makes sense. I love how when a story can also like, you know, it sets up all these pieces where if you just thought about it, you'd probably be able to get there, but it doesn't make it obvious that's the twist. And then you get to it and it's like, oh, okay, now everything makes sense here. Because it was questionable, when you kind of think about it, if you really wanted to delve into it. Well, why would Joker even try to, you know, cause this chaos where all these pills are?
yeah.
Like, and they even commented on it. They're like, of like Batman and GCPD, like Gordon or who everyone there, they were like, why is Joker after pills? Like this isn't fireworks and explosives or whatever, you
These
know?
pills can't do anything to, like, they can't poison the water stream or
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And so, it's one of those things that it's like, they laid the pieces there, and maybe, you would if it was one of those things that if you read monthly, you'd be able to fit it out as you had time to think about it. But obviously when you're reading it, something like this, at least for me, I don't spend too much time thinking. I'm just like, next page, please.
Yeah, it's one of those great things where when you find out about it and then you go back to the first pages, then you might not even have noticed or
Yeah.
paid that much attention to the fact that they're all like, why is he going for a pill factory? Who cares? It's the Joker. And as a reader, you're like, yeah, who gives a shit? What are you worried about,
Yeah.
Bullet? And then it moves on to like, it moves on. And then at the end of it, you're like, oh, fuck. That's one of those great
Yeah.
pre set up deals.
Yeah, it does a great job with that. The other interesting story technique, it's one of those things that I'm kind of like unsure of, like, how some stories do. Is the opening pages of it is like a flash forward in time of like a moment 3/4 in through the issue
Yeah.
when you actually do see Batman in Arkham, which, that is an interesting. I don't know. I kind of have like some mixed feelings sometimes, I guess, when stories do that. Just because, it's like, well, you're spoiling where a big part of the story goes, but then also, a lot of the times when it's about these character driven stories, it can also make certain moments more impactful, in some ways of like,
Well, yeah, it is. It is a risk because you are right. You are telling where the reader's going. But what's great about this is that when you start it off and you're like, oh wait a minute, Batman's chained up. Joker looks like a normal dude to the
yeah,
point I didn't even know it was Joker, and then now I'm like, okay, what happened to get here? Now I want to know.
right,
It's almost like you get to see the wreck and all of the and you're like, okay, wait a minute, how did this car get here? It's like it's some
sure,
weird spot. So it is nice kind of way to get the audience invested to where it's like, okay, everything is on its head. I need to
yeah,
know why this is happening. I need to know why
Yeah,
Batman's chained up. I need to know why Joker looks like a lawyer or a
yeah,
businessman right now. What the hell's going on? And then it gets you invested and you get the
true.
journey to the present, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those stories where it benefits too. Another thing that I think it does to help set up the story is when you're seeing Batman as a prisoner, it makes you automatically, right off the bat, in that headspace of being, well, maybe Batman isn't such that good guy if you're seeing him completely chained
Yeah.
up in
Like, what did
Arkham.
Batman do to get chained up here in
Yeah.
Arkham, you know?
Yeah, because up until we actually get to that actual point in the story, like, it does a great job of making you maybe feel like, well, maybe Jack Napier is the good guy in this story.
Yeah.
And it's
He
one of
has a
those.
point.
Yeah, maybe he does have a point. Maybe he's like, maybe he really is the White Knight in this story. Although not necessarily by the end of it. But no, it is just
It's
overall.
almost like the White Knight's Harley.
Well, yeah, no, that is essentially what they applied at the very end of it.
Yeah, like the
Which
White Knight was Harley in this whole story.
yeah,
Just
she was the whole
yeah.
orchestrator and being able to see behind everything. She was the one person that kind of had the clear picture the entire time.
But
Um,
and it's
so,
also kind of beautiful too, because it's like she loved Jack Napier. She saw Jack Napier's
mhm,
potential,
yeah,
and she moved heaven and earth to make sure her love got a chance to be his best self,
yeah,
even though it crumbled at the end because he just couldn't keep it up. Uh,
yeah,
so yeah, it is kind of that beautiful story where like all of the she did all this out of love,
yeah,
and she knew the man he could be,
yeah,
so she really set that all up, and then tragically she had to watch it fall too. But at least she got those
yeah.
moments with him.
And it was such a tragic way to end that storyline between the two as well, where I love how they played the whole switching between Jack and Joker,
Yeah,
in those last bits as well of, the medicine can only last so long, um, and his disease, if you will, is breaking through it. And so, it's these switches between the two, uncontrolled switches. And by the end of it, when he's getting locked away in Arkham, I love the whole them getting married, and then it's also very tragic at this part too. Like, they're getting married, and then right when she says that I do, and then when it's
yeah,
time for him, that's when the flip switches, turns into Joker, and it's like, like she ends up marrying, I guess, the Joker at the end and not Jack. And so
yeah.
it's one of those great like page turners as well. Like they did a great
That's
job of
just the
doing
kind
that.
of joke Joker would play too. It's like
Yeah,
right up to the I do that I'm gonna pop in there. Now you're
yeah,
married to me, bitch.
yeah. It's one of those things I remember turning the page and I was like, "Oh, holy shit!" Like they did a great job with that panel.
Yeah. Oh, it
Which I
was so
really like.
sad too because it's like I was kind of rooting for him. I really love the way they had Harley
Yeah,
in this. Harley was a really cool character in this, where she was almost
yeah,
like yeah, and the tension between her and Batman was big too, and they
yeah,
played into that even more in the sequel. But it's still mostly it feels more like a big brother, little sister kind of
sure.
relationship for most of it.
Yeah. If I was to designate sort of like a MVP character in this, like I definitely think it'd be Harley. She
Yeah.
was just fantastic in this story, for all the reasons that you just said. And so, like, she really did play like this great middle person, as we discussed. And she was just such a well written character. And one of those things of like, you said a bit earlier about how, she's like third main character between Batman and Joker. But her presence, like, I don't feel like she's actually there as much, but it's one of those things like where her presence there is massive though.
Yeah. Yeah.
With it of being such a huge driving force behind the story, even when she's not necessarily there. And so, and also just like being invested into their relationship is just it was just a really well written love story between the two, which is just
Yeah.
great. And so, um, But yeah, no, it was just honestly just a great story overall. It
Highly
has me,
recommend to the viewers out there.
yeah,
The White Knight is well worth picking up.
absolutely. You know, there's so much in the story. Like, there's a lot of details that we didn't even get to with this necessarily. But I think this video pretty much summed up a pretty good review over it. Obviously, I kind of I gave away the main plot points, but for anyone who hasn't read it, there is a bunch of great things in this that I highly suggest. Uh, you know, for everyone to go check out and read.
This is
Um,
one that you can read multiple times and you'll find different stuff every single time. It's very packed full, artwork wise, Easter egg wise, and also narrative wise. There's a lot of stuff going on in this book.
yeah, absolutely. I echo all that as well. And so I definitely do recommend it. If you can find it, check it out. Batman White Knight. This is an awesome read. So glad to check another one off my list. Go check it out, everyone. Where could the people find you at?
You can find me on YouTube. At Lunchbox Comics. You can find me on all the social medias if you just put in Lunchbox Warren or hashtag Lunchbox Warren or at Lunchbox Warren. Usually just searching Lunchbox Warren and you'll find me on there. Facebook and Twitter are where I'm mostly active, and I stream essentially 6 days a week. Either like on a couple like MSK's show. We do a show here with Dingus, the last panel with Lapse Comics, as well as my own gaming and drawing streams later tonight. So yeah, just to catch me on my YouTube at Lunchbox Comics, and you can find me it's kind of a portal to everything else for my YouTube.
All right. Well, link down below to your YouTube there. Go give him a subscribe. Always a bunch of cool stuff over there. And make sure, if you made it this far, like and subscribe to the Dingus Den for more comic reviews, as well as check out Before the Cape, the Smallville review series that we're doing live on Saturday nights, as well as actually a week today from recording this. So it'll be out shortly after this is out, is the Batman The Long Halloween issue 2 comic dub or comic read through, where that was a lot of fun having a voice cast. Me and 3 friends divvied up the roles and read through Batman The Long Halloween issue 2, where
that sounds like so much fun.
We are dropping that one on Thanksgiving itself. As part of our Batman The Long Halloween comic dub series, where each issue drops on the holiday that it's associated with. So be on the lookout for that. Anyways, thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Warren, for being here. This was I really did think this was a great review. Everyone, highly suggest you check out Batman the White Knight. Support your local comic stores. Or if there's no comic store near you, no shame in also checking out DC's app, as that's also a great bang for your buck, where you can also
find these on the Global Comics app too.
There you go.
For $6 a month, access to a whole catalog of DC, Marvel, IDW, Image. You'll get to be able to read these and all of the sequels to these, as well as a whole plethora of indie comics, like my own comic book, The Adventures of Sig and Joe, which is also on Global Comics. So really the best app to read if you like digital comics is Global Comics. You get all of the mainstream and a massive library of independent ones.
There is a bunch of great stuff on there. And so definitely go check out Global Comics. But anyways, this was a great video. See you all next time here in the Dingus Den. Laters, everyone. Bye.